Gora Nitai, Daya Gora Nitai. Jaya Guru Day, Guru Day, Guru Day. Shri Radha Bihari ki jai, Jai Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Gurunathai ki jai, Shri Radha ki jai, Nam Sankirtan Brihat Mridanga ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Sri Guru and Guranga. Namaste. He's over here. They will do only English. Only English today. Oh, but it's too complicated. Over here. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janabalava Giribara Dari. Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Jamuna Tira Banachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Welcome to the Anjana Sudha Academy and Nubi Harvan, Saturday morning Srimad Bhagavatam. This is something discussion. Yeah. And today we're here with, today we do only English. Hoy día solamente English. And we'll begin with Upendra Das, who's going to talk about the 11th canto, chapter. Oh, you think summary, no? Huh? A modular summary. Okay. Okay.
So today last week we read the module
will now
1
be recorded.
So last week we did the module 1 and 2. So today we are doing the module number 3. The title of that module is the Uddhava Gita Begins.
Oh.
And this covers the chapter number 6 to 9. And the title of the chapter number 6 is the Yadu dynasty retires to Parabhasa.
To where?
Parabhasa.
Prabhasa.
So in 125 years ago, Lord Brahma requested to Krishna to descend, and the purpose of the descent was to remove the earth's distress. But now Brahma and demigods approached Lord Krishna in Dwarka to end his pastimes on the earth if he desires to return to if the Lord Krishna desires to return to his abode. And during that time, the Dwarka was experiencing a series of disturbances. Krishna instructed to the senior members of the Yadu dynasty to go to Parabhasa to to perform a sacrifice. Uddhava could understand that Krishna was going to end his pastimes, and Krishna could have counteracted the curse of the Brahman's curse given to the Yadus. But Krishna decided not to interfere with the Brahman's curse. Uddhava wanted Krishna to take him along with him to back to the Godhead. But Uddhava tells to the Krishna, Uddhava wanted Krishna to take him back to the Godhead, but Krishna wanted Uddhava to stay and give a message to the sages of Badrika Ashram. And Krishna could not spend much time didn't have a chance to meet the sages of the Badrika Ashram. Uddhava tells to the Krishna that the essence of life is to serve Krishna. One can overcome the darkness of Maya by always remembering Krishna and glorifying Krishna's pastimes in the association of the Lord's devotees. So now we are going on to chapter number 7. The title of the chapter is Lord Krishna instructs to the Uddhava. Krishna instructs to the Uddhava to remain on the earth to continue serving the Lord as his representative. And after the Lord ends his pastimes, Krishna instructed Uddhava to remain on the earth and give an important instruction to the sages of the Badrika Ashram. Krishna did not have an opportunity to meet the sages of the Badrika Ashram. Krishna instructed to the Uddhava not to stay in one place, fixed place, but to travel like a sannyasi. Krishna tells to the Uddhava to see the Lord's personal form in everything he sees. Krishna narrates to the Uddhava the conversation between the Maharaj Yadu and Avadhuta. Maharaj Yadu asked Avadhuta how he has become so much knowledgeable without performing any religious duties. Avadhuta tells the Maharaj Yadu that he has taken the shelter of the 24 spiritual masters, which are the elements of the material nature. And he gives the example of the tree. Says from the tree one can learn how to give a service to others. And the tree gives the fruits, flowers, herbs, cooling shade. And when the tree is cut and dragged away, it does not protest. And in the end, the tree gives the firewood to the others. So tree is always serving the others. And now the new chapter starts, which is the story of the Pingala prostitute. Maharaj instructed me don't to go into the detail. This is like a monkey bridge, not railroad bridge. So I'll follow Maharaj's instructions. The chapter 8 is the story of Pingala. Krishna continues to relate Uddhava's instructions, to Uddhava, the instructions of Avadhuta Brahman received from 9 more spiritual masters. From the example of the fish, one can learn that sadhu should never touch a woman, just as a giant elephant gets attracted to the she elephant and is dragged into the hole and killed by the other elephant. So same way one should stay, the sadhu should never touch a woman. From the example of a deer, I remember that one time in conversation, Srila Prabhupada was giving a lecture in Los Angeles and devotee went to get the ice cream. And so he gave examples of this deer, fish. to relate to them, that our senses are so strong that we get attracted to it. The deer, one who is serious in making a spiritual progress, should study the example of a deer, how the hunter's flute attracts to the deer to its death. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that one should avoid listening to the mundane songs and listen to the song of Bhagavad Gita. And now the example of prostitute Pingala. The prostitute Pingala, after waiting for whole night, she could not find any, she was so depressed, she could not find any customer. So Pingala was very much disappointed. But during that process, she gained the detachment. She was telling to herself that I foolishly neglected a service to the Lord and choose not to enjoy the sense and choose to enjoy the sense gratification with the insignificant man. The Pingala prostitute said, I am completely surrendering unto the Lord, and I am completely satisfied, and I have a full faith in the Lord's mercy. So that's the end of the chapter number 8. And now the chapter number 9, the detachment from all that is material. The Avadhuta Brahman was actually a Dattatreya Rishi, and he said the human life of a form, he instructed to the Yadu Maharaj that the human form of a life should be utilized for gaining the knowledge of the absolute truth and not of sense gratification. Avadhuta said that he has become detached and free from false ego after learning from many gurus and living from many gurus. And then he gives the example of one girl. He says, one time the guest came to visit a girl and they wanted to marry her, and the guest wanted to marry her, but she went inside to make a preparation. The bangles on her arms were making a noise. The girl did not want to give a message to the guest that she did not have a servant and she was working by herself. So she removed all the bangles except the one. And this example teaches us that by living alone, one's mind will be stable, and it is easy to fix the stable mind on the Lord. Then Avadhuta Brahman gives another example of arrow maker. He says one time the arrow maker was so absorbed very much in making the arrow straight, but during that time the king and his followers passed by the nearby by the arrow maker, but arrow maker did not pay any attention to the king and his followers, because the arrow maker was so much absorbed in the task of making the arrows straight. The same way, this example teaches us that the same way one should strictly control one's mind and concentrate on worshipping the Lord Hari. I remember when Balram Prabhu from San Diego Temple started the Krishna launch program, he started with the wisdom talk from the Avadhuta teachings of the Avadhuta Brahmins. The chapter number 10. Now this is the beginning of the new module, and its title is Bhakti. The chapter number 10, the title of the chapter number 10 is the nature of the fruitive activities. This module consists of the 5 chapters, and in this chapter, the Krishna defeats the philosophy of a Jaini philosopher, because the philosophy of the Jaini is based on the principle that the living entity should enjoy as much as sense pleasure as possible. And Krishna instructs that the spirit soul is bound within the material body and can develop a pure transcendental knowledge. In this chapter, the Krishna will describe to the Uddhava how to develop the saintly qualities, and by taking the shelter of the Lord and executing a Varnashram Dharma system under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master, one can elevate one's consciousness to the sadhu. Now the chapter number 11 starts. The symptoms of the conditioned and liberated living entities. The Bhakti Vinod Thakur has said that since time immemorial, living entity has been performing fruity activities. Only through the devotional service, Jiva can achieve a liberation. Krishna tells to the Uddhava that the devotional service can purify a material contamination and one can develop attachment to the Lord. One can get away from material existence only by practicing a devotional service. The devotional is attained only by associating with Krishna. All starts, which is beyond knowledge, identity from the matter, and helps one to get attached to Krishna through devotional service. And the pure devotional can help one get attached to the Krishna. The gopis in the previous birth had an association of the saintly persons. And that's why the gopi attained this, when the Krishna appeared, attained the status of always remembering Krishna. Gopis completely rejected the things which was causing the difficulties for them to focus their mind on Krishna. The same way, Prahlad Maharaj was the son of the demon, but when Prahlad Maharaj was in the womb of Kayalu, he had the sound association of Narad Muni. And in his previous birth, the Prahlad Maharaj was attached to the prostitute, and he was the son of Vasudev Sharma, and he was the elder son. And one time they had a very deep argument between each other, and they fasted for a whole day, and that day happened to be Nrsimha Chaturdashi. The same way the demon Vattasura in a previous life was a king, Chitrakud, and he had association of the Narad Muni and sage Angira. The new chapter starts, the Hamsa Avatar answers the questions of the sons of Brahma. The four Kumaras asked the question to Lord Brahma, how one can separate the mind from the sense objects so that one can focus the mind on the Supreme Lord. Lord Brahma could not answer the question. Lord Brahma fixed his mind on Lord Krishna, and Lord incarnated as a beautiful swan, Hamsa Avatar. Hamsa means swan, which has the ability to separate the milk from a mixture of milk and water. And Hamsa Avatar told four Kumaras that the bhakti is only means to achieve the goal of separating the mind from the sense object. But Hamsa Avatar explained his instructions in the philosophical manner because the four Kumaras were more into the path of the Jnana. Now the last chapter is the Lord Krishna explains the yoga system to Sri Uddhava. Uddhava wanted to know which process of the devotional service is the best. Krishna tells to the Uddhava that fixing the mind on the lotus feet of the Lord is the best process of devotional service. Krishna is always visible to his devotee who fixes his consciousness on the Lord. That devotee does not want anything except the Lord. Such a devotee is not interested in obtaining the position of the Brahma, post of Brahma, Indra, or achieving the eightfold yoga system. Krishna did not send, when Sudama visited to Lord Krishna in Dwarka, Krishna did not send Sudama back to his house on his chariot because Krishna wanted to purify the Dwarka from the dust raised by the Sudamas walking back to his house, from the Sudama's lotus feet walking back to his house. one time Srila Prabhupada was giving a class in Mayapur and devotees started getting up and not listening. And Srila Prabhupada said that if you don't get interested listening, if you have no attachment to the hearing and chanting, then all you will do is engage in the sense gratification. So that's all I have, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj. Hanumatpresaka Maharaj ki jai.
So is there more to the Uddhava Gita?
Yes, Maharaj. The next of another 5 chapters.
Wow.
No, there are actually 6 to 29, so 23 chapters are there. So today we covered 7, 8 chapters.
So it's
23 chapters about
it's the biggest section in the whole Bhagavatam, isn't it? Yeah. Wow. Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Okay, so my talk also on the 10th canto. I thought something nice bellicose activities. So please Lord Balaram here. And this is the what is this? This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 50. Krishna directs the work of 1050, and Krishna had killed Kamsa, public enemy number 1. Okay, and then because of that, Kamsa's 2 wives, his names were Rasta and Prapti. Went back to Kamsa and lamenting, the problem. He said, "Oh, this rascal Krishna, he's killed Kamsa." Of course, Jarasandha didn't take account of the fact he'd been killing everybody else left and right and all the family members. But he was following a heroic path. He would challenge them and defeat them and so on. So finally he came with, I don't know, many, 18 Akshahinis or something. Akshahini is like an entire army corps, 18 of these to attack the city of Mathura where Krishna was. And then it says, text number 8, 7 and 8 say, Hanishami, Balam hi etad. Balam hi etad. Hanishami Balam hi etad. Bhuvi Baram Samahitam. Bhuvi Baram Samahitam. Magadena Samanitam. Magadena Samahitam. Vasyanam. Sarva Bubujam. I know you're all just dying to know what the word Bubujam means. Somewhere here. Okay. Of all the kings, Bhupati, no? Okay, master of the earth. Bubu. Okay.
Enjoy it. Which is enjoy it.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Translation. The Supreme Lord thought, since it is such a burden on the earth, I will destroy Jarasandha's army, consisting of Akshahinis, of foot soldiers, horses, chariots, and elephants, which the king of Magadha has assembled from all subservient kings and brought together here. But Jarasandha himself should not be killed, since in the future he will certainly assemble another army. So Krishna was to eliminate all the excessive military forces. Yada hidharna dharmasya. So whenever the earth is overburdened with unnecessary military forces, these things, and Krishna incarnates to eliminate this. During the height of the Cold War, right? When the United States was assembling more and more nuclear weapons, and Russia was assembling more and more nuclear weapons, there was one girl, and she had a display, and she was setting it up in different cities like that, approval of the city. And they had scale models of all the different nuclear weapons and nuclear missiles and submarines. The submarines were about like this long, the missiles like this and stuff. And it was like about a space maybe about this big. And they were spaced just a little bit, but it filled up this entire space. This was one submarine, one model. And you could see like how many nuclear submarines there were, how many nuclear missiles of this type, that type, and it filled up an area about this size. This is not necessary. Even if the demons can incinerate the earth 100 times over. And she didn't do the Russians. She said, but this is kind of comparable. So yeah, unburden unnecessarily military forces. So Krishna is not going to kill Jarasandha because he'll keep bringing more people back like that. Okay. Etad arto avataro yam bubhara hanayamame. This is my purpose. This is the purpose of my present incarnation, to relieve the earth of its burden, protect the pious, and kill the impious. I also assume other bodies to protect religion and to end irreligion whenever it flourishes in the course of time. Sukadeva Goswami continued, as Lord Govinda was thinking in this way, 2 chariots, as effulgent as the sun, immediately descended from the sky, and they were complete with drivers and equipment. The Lord's eternal divine weapons also appeared before him spontaneously. Seeing these, Sri Krishna, Lord of the senses, addressed Lord Shankarshan. Who's Balaram? The Lord said, oh my goodness. Okay. My respected elder brother, see this danger which has beset your dependents, the Yadus. And see, dear master, how your personal chariot and favorite weapons have come before you. The purpose for which we have taken birth. My Lord, is to secure the welfare of our devotees. Please now remove from the earth the burden of these 23 armies. 23 armies. So Hansaduta wanted to make a movie, the Mahabharata and everything else. We're thinking how to represent these things and this kind of weapons and stuff. So one day I was walking across, like on a Saturday, across the Berkeley campus, and they had a helicopter up there, and they were lifting a refrigeration unit on top of maybe like a 5-story building and stuff. And the ground was this guy with the flight suit and the walkie-talkie on the suit talking to the guy and stuff. So I thought, wow, Huey helicopters. This was Vietnam when we just started this. So I ran down to the library, and these things were perfect. They're about this wide, and the pilot sits in front, and above him and behind him is the gunner, okay. And he has, for example, he has a helmet on which has a prismatic lens, circular lens. So it's a series of like circles. And when he turns his head, the bow gun turns on wherever he looks at. It's like, yeah. And this can go from like, 60 rounds a minute to 600 rounds a minute, and so on. So it's like, that's one of the weapons they have. And they have laser-directed Hellfire anti-tank missiles. So if he's going by, if he can just look at a tank when they're shooting by, and it'll lock on and it'll go get it. So they've all these very smart rockets. Then they have ground control radar, which means that the thing will stay like, maybe coming across here, but stay maybe like 40 feet off the ground, maybe 20, 35 feet. It can go very close. Going up to 140 miles an hour. So something is coming at us 30 feet off the ground at 140 miles. It's like, see, these things were perfect. So one of them could have a palm tree on it. Who would be flying that one with a palm tree? Okay, the mark of Garuda, the mark of Hanuman would be Krishna. He'd be his Huey helicopter with that would be Arjuna. Arjuna would have Hanuman with Krishna as the driver. What do you call it? The pilot. What did anyone else? Bhishma had a palm tree, I think. Bhishma was marked with a palm tree. Somebody had this. You could see these things just going back and forth, and they would go up and over their place. They would drop smoke grenades in the air and create like these marking things. They would come back and weave and do all this kind of stuff. So it'd be perfect, So you see in the end, in this Vietnam or something, and down there is with the Karna with his Huey helicopter with a tire caught in the mud, and heat waves rising off, and there's Arjuna up above sitting there, and they're talking back and forth with the microphone. So, because these you think chariots, they kind of a weird thing. No, these were very, very first class military devices. Some wood, which is harder, steel or wood? Some woods are hard, but drone woods in California they grow. These things are so hard. You're going to change your chainsaw blade about every 30 minutes or something. So hard. Oh yeah. And people make a mistake of putting them in their fireplace, and it starts to melt the fireplace. This is hard, and flexible. So you make a chariot out of this kind of woods, as flexible as everything else, and you get two people on them, very and four or six very enthusiastic horses, and you got all these anti-tank weapons, everything else. This was a very serious equipment, And of course, the charioteer and the weapons guy together. So this is, yeah, with no chance to think about anything. Okay, so these celestial chariots came, and the drivers and all their favorite weapons. Okay, and now they got to remove the burden of the earth. Evam Samantya Darshahau. After Lord Krishna had thus invited his brother, the two Dasaras, Krishna and Balaram, wearing armor and displaying their resplendent weapons, drove out of the city in their chariots. Only a very small contingent of soldiers accompanied them. They're facing 24 army corps. Yeah. As Lord Krishna came out of the city with Daruka at the reins of his chariot, he blew his conch shell. What's the name of his conch shell? Pancham. That's a Garbadev Varinarina, Doyanti Sahasrata, Avadala Panchanjanya. Yeah. And the enemy soldiers' hearts began to tremble with fear. Jarasandha looked at the two of them and said, "O Krishna, lowest of men, I do not wish to fight alone with you, since it would be a shame to fight with a mere boy. You fool, you keep yourself hidden. O murderer of your relatives, go away. I will not fight with you." It's called Gupta, right? He's calling him Gupta, because he was the cowherd. He was hidden as a cowherd boy and all these kind of things. And of course, Vishwanath Chakravarti gives total reinterpretation of everything he's saying. You, Rama, should gather your courage and fight with me. If you think you can do it, you may either give up your body when it is cut to pieces by my arrows and thus attain to heaven, or else kill me. So he had these very heroic qualities in many ways. The Supreme Lord said, real heroes do not simply boast, but rather show their prowess in action. We cannot take seriously the words of one who is full of anxiety and who wants to die. Sukadeva Goswami said, as the wind covers the sun with clouds or a fire with dust, that's interesting, the son of Jara marched toward the two descendants of Madhu, and with his huge assemblage of armies surrounded them. Their soldiers, chariots, flags, and horses. Okay. The women stood in the watchtowers, palaces, and the high gates of the city. When they could no longer see Krishna and Balaram's chariots, identified by banners and marked with the emblems of Garuda and a palm tree. Oh, I guess palm tree is Balaram, I guess. What is Vishnu? Oh, lion. Vishnu's a lion, I think. Vishnu's a lion, I think. Okay, so Balaram's a palm tree. They were struck with grief and fainted. Seeing his army tormented by the relentless and savage rain of arrows from the massive opposing forces gathered like clouds about him, Lord Hari twanged his excellent bow, Saranga, which both gods and demons worshipped. Lord Krishna took arrows from his quiver, fixed them on the bowstring, pulled back, and released endless torrents of sharp shafts that struck the enemy's chariots, elephants, horses, and infantrymen. The Lord shooting his arrows resembled a blazing circle of fire. You can imagine that on television, movies. Yeah. Elephants fell to the ground. Their foreheads split open. Cavalry horses fell with their severed necks. Chariots fell with their horses. Okay. Flags, drivers, and masters all shattered, and the foot soldiers collapsed with severed arms, thighs, and shoulders. Well, there's a long verse here. Okay. Thank goodness. On the battlefield, hundreds of rivers of blood flowed from the limbs of the humans, elephants, and horses who have been cut to pieces. These rivers of arms. What in these rivers, the arms resembled snakes, human heads resembled turtles, dead elephants looked like islands, and dead horses looked like crocodiles. Hands and thighs appeared like fish, human hair like waterweed, bows like waves, wow, and various weapons like clumps of bushes. The rivers of blood teemed with these. Okay. Chariot wheels look like terrifying whirlpools, and precious gems and ornaments resembled stones and gravel in the rushing red rivers, which arouse fear in the timid, and joy in the wise. With the blows of his plow weapon, the immensely powerful Balaram destroyed Magadendra's military force. Although his force was as unfathomable and fearsome as an impassable ocean. For the two sons of Vasudeva, the lords of the universe, the battle was hardly more than play. For him who orchestrates the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the three worlds, who possesses unlimited spiritual qualities, it is hardly amazing that he subdues an opposing party. Still, when the Lord does so, imitating human behavior, sages glorify his act. Purport. Oh, this is Sridharanandamara now. The philosopher Aristotle once argued that the Supreme God would hardly take part in human activities, since all ordinary activities are unworthy of such a divine being. Similarly, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, who almost certainly never read the works of Aristotle, raises a similar point. Since Sri Krishna maintains, creates, and annihilates the entire universe, isn't it an uninteresting mismatch when he fights against Jarasandha? The answer is as follows. The Lord plays the part of a human being, and expanding his pleasure potency creates thrilling, transcendental pastimes full of suspense and dynamic action. But the Lord's Yogamaya potency appears exactly like a human being. And thus we may enjoy the spectacle of the Supreme Person acting on the earthly stage. Undoubtedly, stubborn agnostics will argue that since Krishna is God, there is no real suspense involved. Such skeptics simply do not understand Krishna's attractive potency. Beauty and drama, even on the material stage, possess their fascinating logic. And similarly, we love Krishna for his own sake. We appreciate his beauty for its own sake. And we appreciate Krishna's pastimes because they are in fact wonderful in and of themselves. In fact, Krishna executes his pastimes not for mundane egotistical purposes, but for our pleasure. Thus, the presentation of the spiritual pastimes is in itself an act of love that Krishna performs for the infinite spiritual happiness of pure-hearted souls who have transcended material envy of the Godhead. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti quotes an important verse from the Gopala Tapani Upanishad. Nara kriti para brahman karana manushaha. The supreme absolute truth for his own purposes appears in a human-like form, although he is the source of everything. Somebody Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-32, we find, this is like Brahma, no? Yan mitram paramanandam purnam brahma sanatanam. The source of transcendental bliss, the eternal Supreme Lord, has become their friends. And also by Yogamaya, he also forgets he has these potencies sometimes and everything else. So he brings this stuff down to a level, right? You know, where there is actually suspense in Brahma. But it's all being controlled by Yogamaya, the internal potency. Right? rather than the external potency. Okay. Jarasandha, with his chariot lost and all his soldiers dead, was left with only his breath. At that point, Lord Balaram forcibly seized the powerful warrior, just as one lion takes hold of another. With the divine noose of Varuna and other mortal ropes, Balaram began tying up Jarasandha, who had killed so many foes. But Lord Govinda still had a purpose to fulfill through Jarasandha, unless he asked Balaram to stop. Jarasandha, whom fighters had highly honored, was ashamed after being released by the two lords of the universe, and thus he decided to undergo penances. On the road, however, several kings convinced him with spiritual wisdom, Brahman, and mundane arguments that he should give up his idea of self-abnegation. They told him, your defeat by the Yadus was simply the unavoidable reaction of your past karma. All of his armies having been killed and himself neglected by the personality of Godhead, King Jarasandha, the son of Brihadrata, then sadly returned to the kingdom of the Magadhas. Lord Mukunda had crossed the ocean of his enemy's armies with his own military force completely intact. He received congratulations from the denizens of heaven, who showered him with flowers. The people of Mathura, relieved of their feverish anxiety and filled with joy, came out to meet him as professional bards, heralds, and panegyrists, I don't know what that means, sang in praise of his victory. What is a panegyrist?
This is one who praises another, professional praise.
Okay. And bards I was looking up too. It's almost the same thing. Some people was a bad, some cultures was a bad word, some was a good word. It means like poetry and that kind of stuff. And I looked at the always we said that other thing. Everything and something and nothing. So I looked up thing, and it comes from ding or something. And it's somebody like a court. They all get together to have a court or something. So the thing or the ding was the court coming together. Then it became the point that was being discussed in there, some legal point, And finally it came down to also include inanimate objects and that and so on, It's the origin of something, nothing. Wow. It seems that, Prabhupada would use like the same English words when he was translating a Sanskrit word, because the Sanskrit language was more precise and so on, especially philosophically. So Prabhupada, when he would translate a Sanskrit word, I've seen many times, he would use the same English word again and again. And by that process, he then started creating a standardization of the English language and so on. It's like, how many different things did Prabhupada accomplish historically? Wow, BC, AD, BP, AP. Okay. As the Lord entered his city, conch shells and kettle drums sounded. The many drums, horns, venas, flutes, and mridungas played in concert. The boulevards were sprinkled with water. There were banners everywhere, and the gateways were decorated for the celebration. The citizens were elated, and the city resounded with a chanting of Vedic hymns. I guess the vultures were taking care of the feast outside. And it was sometimes described they were collecting all these jewels and ornaments, I guess, washing off the blood or something. Okay. As the women of the city affectionately looked at the Lord, their eyes wide open with love, they scattered flower garlands, yogurt, parched rice, and newly grown sprouts upon him. Lord Krishna then presented the Yadu king all the wealth that had befallen on the battlefield, namely the countless ornaments of the dead warriors. Okay. 17 times the king of Jarasandha met defeat in this very way, and yet throughout these defeats, he fought on with his Akshahini divisions against the forces of the Yadu dynasty, who were protected by Sri Krishna. By the power of Lord Krishna, the Vishnus would invariably annihilate all the forces of Jarasandha, and when all his soldiers had been killed, the king released by his enemies would go away again. So he has determination, right? Determination. Wow. Just as the 18th battle was about to take place, a barbarian warrior named Kalyavana, sent by Narada, appeared on the battlefield. So in Hindi movies, Narada Muni is always a troublemaker. He's causing all these problems, and convincing Kamsa to kill all of Devaki's children, and he's sending this guy coming, but he has a purpose behind him, troublemaker. So anyways, things there. And then Krishna was seeing that being attacked by both sides, and defending this side, the other side will attack Mathura. So the solution was?
Take everyone to Dwarka.
Yeah. So he moved the entire city to Dwarka, which is an island. And it's still there. The city of Dwarka is still there on the coast. It's not very big, right? In Dwarka. Yeah. And okay, so the island was later sunk when Krishna disappeared. That's just the story. Well, is there archaeological evidence of these things? Well, yeah, Dr. Rao was his name. He was in charge of the archaeological process, which was investing in the bay. And they had a few scuba divers and one scoop boat, and they would, with a scoop they could pull the sand out, and they started finding like the archaeological remnants in the bay, and basically they mapped the entire thing. It was a big wall around this size like that. But the problem was that when the tide came in, it would basically move about as much sand as this height of this building to aspire with it. So they had to unscoop it out. They didn't have that much money. It took a long time and everything else, but they were finding archaeological remnants right there, which looked like, could have been like a walled city, everything else. So anyway, he was in the United States and he was in Los Angeles, and Maharaj, somehow they invited him or something, but I was sitting, Bojade was driving, I was riding shotgun, navigator, and then behind him, they were, Dr. Subramanian Maharaj, Dr. T.D. Singh, was in the back with this Professor Rao. It's about 1 hour drive to Laguna Beach, I think. And so for the first 20 minutes, Maharaj was preaching to him scientifically. He was arguing politely, In the second 20 minutes, he was starting to ask questions. In the last 20 minutes, he was coming up with scientific support. You see, that was that quick. He very quickly, Prabhupada says, you scratch any Indian, you'll find a devotee of Krishna. Scratch any Hindu. Because it's covering all the British effort, right? Industrialization, at least at that time, never penetrated because it didn't have any depth to it. It was all a superficial reasoning and superficial arguments, and might makes right. So this culture remained intact at a deep level. And then you saw, I got some other times too. Gregory Benford, right? He was a famous astrophysicist, Irvine, University of California, Irvine. And Bhakti Subramanian Maharaj, when he was a student, would bring these people to meet Prabhupada. And out back of the temple in Los Angeles, there's a little area they made for a garden, maybe about like one quarter the size of this room. A little garden for Prabhupada. And so Maharaj said, I've heard, he published a nice article on this, that he brought Dr. Bedford there. And also he's one of the most famous science fiction authors too. He won the Nebula Award and different things like that. So anyway, he came to meet Prabhupada. And in the beginning, there were some sannyasis and senior devotees there talking to Prabhupada. He was sitting there. So Professor Benford came in. He probably Subramanian and Maharaj, and probably received him very nicely, getting nice seat stuff, He started preaching a little bit about our culture and philosophy. And Dr. Benford was arguing, politely, but he was saying, well, maybe this and that, and this and that. What was going on? Okay. And after a few minutes, they brought in this big plate of Mahaprasada for Prabhupada, and they put it on the table. And Subramanian Maharaj said that Dr. Benford's eyes opened up. Never seen anything like that before. Wow. Then Prabhupada pushed it toward him and said, this is for you. He said, oh. So then he started eating. And Prabhupada stopped preaching, and was just talking about cultural things. And he said how he came to America, what his experience was. He said, everything in America was bigger. He said, even the squirrels were bigger. And Dr. Benford was very, charmed, talking. And then Prabhupada told Subramanian Maharaj, he said, oh, take your friend to see the arti. And you have the pujari in the morning, but the temple in Los Angeles is like, 5 times as big as this, and the pujari is all dressed up. So they went and seeing this, there were hundreds of devotees chanting, the girls, beautiful young girls in saris, and handsome young brahmacharis, and everything was a very impressive thing, all the rituals. So he said after the arti, we headed back to Prabhupada's garden, and there was a plate of eggplant balaram. This was curd and tomato and eggplant. And somebody for the feast, somebody had kind of put up on a ledge, and Sri Damodar said, Dr. Benford said, "Oh, can I take that?" Yes, And he was surprised because he already had eaten a lot, but he was come back in purposely eating that. Yeah. And then Prabhupada started preaching exactly the same points. And now, what to speak of accepting the same thing, Dr. Benford was coming up with scientific information to support the points, So to one side, Prabhupada turned to Brahmanwars and went, way to a man's brain, just to his stomach. This is the standard, yeah. Because it's not just that it's tasting good, but it's nice, And so your body tastes whatever you eat. I think it's for 3 hours afterwards. You feel that way, whatever you ate. So if you have a quick snack, you're just, back to school. But if you have a nice lunch and go to school and stuff, and you substantial way of dealing with things. Okay, so that's interesting. But then I saw an anthology many years later, maybe like 1980 or something. It was an anthology of Benford's best stories. Oh, I remember him. And there was one story. It was called the White Man. And some guy was like half conscious, and he'd been captured by some aliens or something, and they were like tall white figures, and they were saying things to him. He was on a table, and they were experimenting with him or something. He would go out of consciousness and come back. He sort of flashing through his whole life and stuff. He had one he was a scientific person or something. But one consort, one lady, and they were attached to each other, different emotional things. But finally, she went into cryogenic, had her body froze, and he was going through different things. You can see he was a good author, bringing very nice emotional things. The guy's growing up and developing and getting older. And at some point during his life, he went to see an Indian Swami in Los Angeles. The character in the novel. Yeah. And there was a beaded curtain, and he went inside the beaded curtain, and there was the man, kind of a Indian complexion, dressed in robes. So this is his experience of what he got from Prabhupada. Okay, they went on talking. He's describing how his friend had left and this and that. And the person was very compassionate and very gentle, so forth, so on. And talked about how we don't really die and these kind of things. Actually, the soul's immortal and so on. But he didn't really feel like he really answered his problem completely and stuff. Didn't feel that. But he thanked him very much and went on. Okay, so that was his experience of what he got with Prabhupada. So this guy goes on the story, and finally finally what's happening is actually he was on the way to the hospital for a heart checkup from Prabhupada, and he passed out in front of the hospital. They took him in, and the guys in white are, of course, surgeons and stuff, And they're doing exploratory surgery. They're trying to tell him, you got to sign this form so we can do this surgery. You got to sign this thing. Otherwise, you'll die. And the guy in the story says, but we don't die. And that's what he got, which is quite a bit. It's this confidential knowledge. Is we don't die. The most confidential is our immortal nature is to be related to the supreme immortal person. Yeah. So very interesting discussions of scientists. So we're saying all these things actually happen. It's a whole different lecture program there, because we go through if you go to New York City in the fall, there's still some fruits, some flowers, some things happening. But in the middle of winter, there's no fruits, no flowers, right? You don't see any animals. You don't see any people playing. There's everything is just totally ice and dead. So in Kali Yuga, it's the same time. Everything is like this. But it's saying no, there was a previous age. Things go through cycles, and so then these stories are taking place in a different epoch. And there's a lot of other evidence about this. That these things existed, and so on. So any questions or comments? Yes. Is this?
Your son feels dejected because he
Oh yeah.
and he was to just give up his life.
Yes.
He's convinced by another person that he can listen. This is no way.
Yeah.
And the same exact experience happened to you.
And Kongsa also.
Yeah.
Kongsa was going to give it up. That by bad association, we get inspired to to take up. So the real thing is changing your association, not just understanding or having experiences. Those are good, but it's just that, well, one phrase in Alcoholics Anonymous is that stupidity is thinking you can do the same thing the same way and get a different result. Again and again, I say I'll go with my friends in the bar, but I'll only drink seltzer water. And then after a while, you start drinking, apricot brandy and this and that. It happens 18 times. No, this time I won't. And because without changing the association, he's going to realize I just cannot associate with these people. Even San Francisco is like business community. It was something like if your social values deviate more than 40% from the people you're with, you won't keep the job. You just give it up. You don't start taking business lunches and develop certain attitudes and ethical standards and stuff. It just, won't work out. So association is the real key to it. Questions? Yes. Okay. Yes.
We're talking about conversations and how important they are to talk about science. And, when you're creating a bridge with, academic or a scientist, or and this is really good preaching to talk about science and bring in consciousness. So I just was wondering, in your experience when you had symposiums or panels, did you see connections being made with these Jnani-like people, or did you see their hearts changing? Was there, or did it take more than that? Because their association is in the academia.
So she's asking that in our actual experience, did you see people actually changing their heart and stuff? Oh, definitely. But there are many different kinds of people. Like I was quoting the example of Dr. Rao, big scientist, archaeologist, and within 1 hour he went from being a materialist to being a student to being a proponent. And of course, the Swarup Damodar, there's so many people who were all scientific background, everything else, and then they became devotees. One very, very nice story was that in the castle in Spain, you have there castle. It's like a manor house type thing. This Franco's time, but very old, elegant. So the devotees were there. There was one PhD physics guy, and he had so many questions about different things, like this kind of stuff. So many things he doubts, so many, and they couldn't really answer them. And they didn't know what to do with him. They had him washing pots and not really engaged in business. But they kept telling him, this scientist, this kind of scientist, Sadaputa is coming. He's coming. Okay, he'll be in Spain for something. So it was Bhakti Sarangamars told us this whole story. He was there then. So anyway, Sadaputa came at maybe like 10 o'clock at night from their flight, arrived in Madrid and got there. So next morning, Bhakti Saranga says he was sitting there. There was another, maybe two more devotees, maybe three, and Sadaputa was sitting. And then this guy came in, and he said it's like, when two thieves meet upon the road, they need no introduction, no each other by sight. The guy came and looked. They just looked at each other, and it was just immediately, Godzilla, versus King Kong. And just like, and the guy kind of, without breaking his glance, kind of sidled to a seat in Sadaputa. And they just started, And Bhakti Sarangamar said it was the most intense conversation he ever heard in his life. Facts, data, logic. There was a tape recorder about this far from where he was. He tried to go over and touch it. They both kind of turned at him. With this 600,000 gigabyte, 40 million amp intelligence, he pulled his hand back. He said 3 times he tried to reach it. Every time he just kind of looked at him like that. He said it went on for 45 minutes without a break. At the end of the thing, the guy was completely convinced, and so on. But it's the same way. Yeah. When you see there's new families coming to the temple, and the guy is asking questions, and the lady's looking at other standards to see if this is a proper place or not. How are the kids being treated? Different things like that. So everybody has their particular perspective. The dog. Smell of the prasadam. Yeah. It's a good religion, Yeah. We had a dog in Peru, he came back with a Harinam party. He wouldn't leave. He was kind of a street kind of guy. He just wouldn't go away. And so then the temple president was throwing water on him and stuff. But then the ladies secretly started giving him prasad. So he hung around. And then the temple president accepted this, And he was very attached, different pastimes and stuff. But I remember one time when we were coming up from Lima, it's about a 45-minute drive back to the temple after evening program in the center down there. And we had to bring back maybe like 6 cheesecakes for Sunday feast the next day to sell. And one of them fell right over flat and face down on the dirt in the seat, the floor. Okay. So we got there and delivered them, and we parked in the dirt road, which is, the temple with all the houses. What are we going to do with this thing, So here comes Harinam down the dirt road. So he picked the whole thing up and put it outside. And without lifting his head up, he ate the entire thing. He looks up, licking his face, like looking at us. So it was a good religion, Yeah. I like your religion. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah.
You spoke a few days ago about how there's different archetypes across the world.
Okay.
And how they affect the influence of the archetype affects our subtle body. If I understood it correctly.
Okay, well, so the question is about how archetypes accept our subtle body or whatever. This is a term from Jung's cosmology, from his description of his personal experiences and these dreams and meditations and these things. So his idea was that there's which people didn't have before. Before, all there is the gross world, and even now, physicists, the mind is a product of the brain. No, okay. So his idea, and other people too, was that there is he didn't like the term unconscious. Prabhupada also didn't like the term unconscious, subconscious. Because he said, so at some moment we're unconscious of something. Yeah, but then very quickly we can become conscious of it. And other material is actually hidden, for certain reasons from us, which you can also become conscious of. So collective he said that there are archetypes there, discussing some of these, like the golden bowl of water with a knife across it with a serpent. You find people have the same kind of like archetypal images and stuff. He came from a tradition. Before him was Immanuel Kant. After that was Nietzsche, and after that was Jung. So Kant's idea, and he's going to go, people say, he said, the greatest philosopher in Western history and stuff. Okay. His point was that it's impossible to experience the world in any kind of organized fashion unless you already have some abilities. Like I can separate things into different things, right? Well, yeah. Otherwise, what? Light's coming in. It's just light. Yeah. But okay, I can isolate. I have the ability to start isolating. These are called a priori abilities, or categories.